And welcome back to the Resilience Institute podcast today for episode 4, I think, of season 2. And today I was lucky enough to have David Gray from David Gray Rehab on the podcast. I've been following David for quite a while now, since before COVID, and I tried some of his programs that he put during COVID, and that's where I really started to dive down the biomechanics and the gait and human movement model and principles. I went to one of his seminars at the start of February. I think it was this year, February this year, and learnt so much. It was one of the best things. It was a very last minute decision. Booked one of the last tickets and flew down. I think that week I booked it. And it was one of the best decisions I've made for my personal development when it comes to movement, simplifying rehab and training and simplifying processes and systems and making these small jumps in our training. We had a great chat on everything human movement, gait, loading. We even went into a bit of social media and business stuff. We kind of talked about everything. Great episode, learnt a lot, and I'm sure you will too, and get a good idea of how David operates and how he thinks. A lot of people think he's just biomechanics and just movement, but he does have a very biopsychosocial approach, but it just happens to be he is known for his biomechanics and his gait. So you get a lot out of it. You learn a lot of things, and in terms of your own training, like if you're struggling with movement and struggling with some of your programming, your load management, we've just released the solo templates to everyone now. So for less than $20, you can get a training program on pretty much anything. We'll be updating them as we go along, but if you want to grow your glutes, if you want to do power building, if you want to do some full body sessions, they're split into certain days, and speed, endurance, sports. So we'll be adding to those, but our main goal now is to really make premium, proper training on a proper app accessible and affordable for absolutely everyone. So for less than $20, you can get a 12-week program. So if you're interested, I'll drop a link below in the podcast show notes. And if you have any ideas of training programs you want that aren't currently on there, let us know and we'll be sure to add that to the list. But enjoy the podcast with David. If you have any questions for either of us, let us know. But it was a great chat and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. So enjoy. David, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Hayden. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the chat, my friend.
It's been a while since the Sydney seminar where we got to not have a Guinness, but we had a couple of beers and it was a good time. Been a while.
Yeah, it was a great time. I still reminisce sometimes about Sydney.
Yeah. What have you been doing in the meantime?
That was February. So just teaching. We've taught a lot of workshops this year. And we have, apart from that, just back seeing clients, trying to be consistent, like with social media and business stuff, and just try and be as consistent as possible with things, try and get systems in place. And it's been good and bad, up and down, as you know, and mostly good though. So it's been a good year, I think.
That's the thing, staying on top of everything. You start doing the business stuff, and then the content takes a hit. Then you start focusing back on content, and everything. It's hard to keep on top of everything.
Yeah, there's a lot. Well, look, it's your own choice, like, you know. So I always try and remember that like we chose to do this in this way, and there's a lot of cons to not doing it as well. So we're finding better and better balance as we go along. But I always end up moving the goalpost then, which is like, okay, 5 years ago I said, right, I want to make X amount of money and I would be happy if I just worked with these type of clients. And then within 6 months we hit that goal, and then the goalposts always move. And I think they always probably will, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. You got the Lambo yet? Well, that's still on the list.
Not yet. I don't think the Lambo would look well in my city. It's fucking
like
if someone if we're in Waterford, southeast of Ireland, and if someone is driving like a semi-nice car, everyone hates them.
Actually, I think I think at the seminar you're talking about that. I think you're saying how like not even a BMW, like people get a BMW and they go, "Oh, you must be blah, blah," and they stir it up.
Exactly.
Like the tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, 100%. But if you go to Bondi Beach, like there's a lot of nice cars, and there's a lot of young people driving nice cars, like in their 20s, which you wouldn't really see here. You'd see like, oh, this guy got a Merc or a Beamer. and he was a doctor for the last 20 years, like, you know, this type of thing.
Well,
But
yeah, it's like, and you would know, it's like the internet money now. It's like anyone, like,
100%.
and obviously there are good and bad ways to make it, but these days you can make money doing anything. Just
Yeah.
have a laptop and you can be a millionaire.
Yeah.
But so for the people who don't know you and haven't heard of you, a lot of my listeners already have. Just a little bit of, maybe give a bit of an intro about yourself. Obviously, one of the things that I first resonated with when I started following you, whenever it was now, was that you learned, like similar to me and probably similar to a lot of coaches, learned your stuff because of an injury. You had an injury. So tell us a bit about that and how that got you to where you are and your kind of quick rise to Instagram fame.
um yeah, I had pretty bad knee injury, and I was trying to play a lot of sport at the time in Ireland, a lot of Gaelic football and hurling, and yeah, it was just a bit of a mess for about 10 years, and I felt like I was not getting the help I wanted or needed. And looking back, maybe some of that was my fault. Maybe I wasn't listening to people, but no one really convinced me they knew what they were talking about, to be honest. And looking back, they probably didn't know what they're talking about. And whether that's a combination of things, I actually think it's the knowledge in 10 years, I would say. The knowledge around certain issues, like that was a tendon issue that I had, a pretty nasty patellar tendon issue.
Yeah,
The the knowledge that has spread around that issue is huge now. So like usually now what took me 8-9 years to really get on top of it all, or actually figure out what helps at all here and feel better, I'd usually be able to help a client within like 3 or 4 weeks, like, you know. So, and that's not because I'm amazing, it's just because we actually understand this thing a lot better. So that goes for a lot of tendon issues. So yeah, it wasn't just like people were crap, it's just sometimes knowledge takes time to develop, and I wonder where we'll be in another 10 years. So yeah, I just had a lot of issues and injuries with my hips and knees and Achilles and all this stuff, and just got quite frustrated and said I'd try and learn and figure out what was going on and keep an open mind and learn from people in all different worlds, not just like, okay, this is a scientific journal that says that, but like figure out actually, because I had been with the doctors and the surgeons and the most research-based people at that time, and they couldn't help me. So like, what choice are you left with? And I think that's a lot of people's experience still. That doesn't mean that the research or the science is bad, but like, it's not the only thing necessarily either. So yeah, I just went to try to learn from as many good people as I could. And I think now we're at a stage where our like business is helping a lot of people, predominantly in the rehab space, where we are working with a lot of athletes, but not just athletes. It's a lot of people who are just active people. I like to work with active people, and they like to work with us, I think, where they don't have to be a professional athlete or even a semi-professional or an amateur athlete. They just want to like be able to go for a run or run a bit better. It's them type of people who like to be active. And maybe they can't be active because they're in pain, or maybe they can't be as active as they want to be. Sorry, I should say, because they're in pain, or maybe they're injured, or maybe they just feel like I could be moving a lot better than I am, or performing a lot better than I am. So it's not just rehab, but yeah, predominantly that. So we have a few parts to the business and what I do, I suppose, which is working one-on-one with clients. I will say that is predominantly very good athletes at this stage now. I'm a little bit picky and choosy with who I work with one-on-one. We also have a physio, Alice, that works with a lot of our online clients, and she helps rehab and coach people there. We have our DIY programs that kind of people can do themselves. And I don't mean this as a sales pitch, just to explain to people. And then we have our education side of the business.
I'll just cut
Yeah,
this
cut
bit
that
out.
bit out if you want. But
No.
but it just helps to explain, like, we have our education side of things as well, which is like coaches and therapists. So there's a few different parts, and I enjoy the variety, to be honest.
That's what kind of kicked it off for you, and that's probably the first time. I wouldn't say the first time I heard of you, but probably the first thing that helped me put it all together was like the lower body basics and stuff. Like This would have been what? When did you? It was like COVID. Maybe you released it.
Yeah,
It was like the plan.
May I think May 2020 released that first
Yeah,
program.
because I saw it come up and I'd been following you for a bit, but like that was kind of thing that launched you, and that was one of those things that it was such a simple set of things, and obviously we'll talk about like gait and stuff and how just moving better can help people so much. But that was one of the first things I noticed, and it showed that you don't have to always work with someone 101 or be there 24/7. It's just like you were saying. Now that we know how things work and biomechanics and all these things, you can give people the low hanging fruits, and you, as you would you know, they get better. And you it's now like I don't know how many you've sold now. It's like 20,000 or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
Lambo kind of money, but it's one of those things that you don't need to be one on one all the time. Like and from that, like where'd you start going from there? Like, did you change anything, or did you just keep going with that, and then seminars popped up, or?
Yeah, I wrote that program. It was just literally what it says. Like, I'm very literal with stuff, lower
Yeah.
body basics. It was like, right, I'm sitting on the
Mhm.
couch one day during COVID and everyone else is releasing programs. And I actually I felt like I had missed the boat, which tells you like
Yeah.
it's never too late to do something.
Yeah. A
Because
good
people, I
product, you
think,
know. Yeah.
yeah, like our podcast, everyone says like, oh, there's so many podcasts. Like, oh, why do I need my one? But like if it's good, it's good. Like, people
Yeah.
will do it. So yeah, I just wrote that. It took me about 20 minutes to write it on the couch. I filmed it with an old iPhone 4, and it was in my dad's office. The light was flickering. It was absolutely like the production quality. There was
Moo. Yeah.
yeah, it was like it was dog shit. But like I actually look back at some of the videos. I didn't even look in the mirror. I didn't even like brush my hair or something beforehand. It
Yeah.
was just like so, but people loved it, and I do think it showed people actually more so than anyone. It showed coaches and therapists that were
Well, it's like me.
relying
Yeah.
very heavily on manual at the time, potentially, and being very cautious with their clients movement wise. It was just like, holy shit, David just and not like not just when they got the program, but they were seeing like thousands of people on my stories and stuff posting, oh, my knee pain just
Yeah.
went away, my hip pain. And they were like, hang on, like these people weren't doing a session every week with someone, weren't doing manual therapy, weren't being super cautious. Now it was relatively I had to write it with certain people in mind, but
Disclaimers and
like
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, but it was like it wasn't like they were doing trap bar jumps or something on the first session. Like it was just relatively cautious. Like here's where I would start with people. I think it showed people a lot of lessons, and it showed me it went in some way of confirming my bias, which is like people need to move a little bit more, move with a little bit more variety, get a little bit stronger, and be empowered to say, actually, my body can adapt. And that strengthened that bias even more for me. And it has continued to do so. So since that, yeah, we released a few other programs, and then just I felt like I was almost educating our people that liked us, like even just our regular Joe Soap people, and then our coaches and therapists as we went along. So as I would release a new program, that would kind of give people another insight into how we think about things, and then another one, and then another one, and then just a natural progression then to teaching workshops and stuff for people who want to get into more detail. So yeah, I think it's been a fun ride, and I'm able to just talk about things that I like to talk about. Things when I'm really interested in something, then I'll start talking about it more and more and more, and like eventually release a product or something like that. And it's just kind of a natural progression rather than this big master plan that it wasn't a
Yeah.
master plan. It was just like, yeah.
Because then and a lot of that is obviously focused on a lot of the principles of gait that you educate on in the seminars, and a lot of the ones I learned when I went there. What what was the things you went down the rabbit hole of the most? Like obviously you got the gait and the PRI, and how did you get to the model you have now? And maybe for people who don't know the gait model, what if you were to explain the gait model and how you got there, and how that it has been such a successful thing for people by able to just do a couple of breathing drills and some certain holds and stuff like that. Like, how did you get there, and kind of maybe a bit of an explanation of the gait model for those people who haven't heard of it?
Uh
Bit
yeah.
of a loaded
So
question.
no, it's not a load of questions. It's just a tricky question, you know, because there's a lot of ways you could go about it. I could probably answer it in a million different ways depending on the day. So I'll say overall, right, or more of an overarching model that we have an idea around movement is we should hopefully be able to move our joints. And that does make sense to people when it comes to a hand or an elbow. Like, would you like to be able to pick up that glass of water? Yes. Well, if you can't bend your hand in certain ways, then you're not, or your fingers and all these joints, you're not going to be able. So, like, would you choose the hand that could do that or the hand that couldn't do that? Most people, logical people, would choose the hand that could do that. So that makes sense. And that's not just joints. Obviously, there's motor control and muscles and all this stuff, but we just take joints for now. So I just kind of extrapolate that across the body and say, wherever there's joints, I'd like to be able to move them. Necks, spines, ribs, feet, every joint possible. Not in a contortionist way. I have a different view. I think a lot of people think of flexibility or mobility as, okay, there's about 4 positions. There's front splits, side splits. There's a back bend, like a bridge backwards, and there's some kind of forward fold, like a yoga forward fold or something like that. Yoga would basically, I know they have loads of different things, but when most people think of, if they said, I'm looking at a yogi, oh, he or she, look at them, they're so flexible. Those are the type of things they're judging off. And actually, when I get a lot of yoga teachers into my clinic who are struggling with certain things, they are so locked up through certain areas. So my idea of flexibility, or maybe mobility is a better word in this instance, isn't necessarily like show me your end range. It's show me your movement through all of these areas. And I think that's important, to be able to just move your joints. There's joints there for a reason. There's gaps between the bones. If there wasn't gaps between the bones, it'd be a long bone that couldn't move. So that's one. A second one is I suppose that's the biggest one when I think about movement. So it's not just gait, but what allows where the gait stuff I think comes in is it allows you to start to look at coordination a little bit more deeply and say, okay, like when I bend my knee when I'm walking, I should hopefully bend my ankle and my hip as well. And then when I extend all of these together, but not necessarily at the same time. So I think that's where gait starts to come into play. And then you can start to see, okay, you're like, when I check your knee mobility on the table, yes, you can bend your knee, and you have a knee problem. But when I look at you walking, you don't bend your knee for some reason. So it's not just the movement potential at a joint, it's actually the coordinate of the movement pattern of how you actually do it and in what way. So I think that's where the gait stuff comes in. And then those two things together, the idea that one, we should be able to move our joints, hopefully, and two, there's usually like similar enough movement patterns. Everyone is different, but for some reason, we all decided to stand up and walk and put one foot in front of the other. So there's very similar movement patterns that are going to occur. And I use walking and gait, not just walking, but jogging, running, throwing, these type of things, because they are just embedded into our system. Yeah. We are not human without them. So yeah, the coordination side of things and then the movement potential side of things, you put those two things together, and I put those two things together, or a lot of people put those two things together. But in your own mind, if you can put those things together, you can kind of start to think, okay, we want to get the joints moving, and then we want to get them moving like in a certain way with these synergistic muscular contractions and so on. And it just leaves you, it can get very complex, but it leaves you with a very simple thing of like, you don't move that area, let's get it moving. And then you're not strong around that area, let's strengthen it. And I have a lot of faith in the body and the human nervous system, no matter who it is, that when you do those things, if they're already not doing those things and you do those things, people usually feel really good. Not always, but usually feel really good. And that's a very empowering thing, I think, for me as well. Very empowering for me to say, for me to think, I really think this person is missing a few simple things and we can give it back.
I think that's one of the biggest things with gait is everyone goes, oh, gait is just walking. But I think the biggest thing I got from you and where I initially learnt it was that gait isn't just walking. Gait is like this rhythmical movement pattern we have to do everything. So for the people who, again, don't get the gait side of it, and how would you describe what gait is in terms of the gym as well and how it may apply to walking and running? And a lot of people think, okay, gait's just, okay, someone walks this way and you can't straighten your leg or bend it. That's gait.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually throwing. It's actually moving. Like, how would you summarize it for someone who's never heard of gait before?
Yeah, it's tricky, and people will argue against this, and there's a lot of valid points to say no, like everything isn't gait, and everything isn't gait. But if you strip it back to like first principles, let's say, like our bones were shaped or are shaped in a certain way. I'm a believer of evolution, right? We were something and now we are something else. And along the way, we were probably a lot of different things. So we developed and we became what we are today versus what we were whenever many years ago. And we developed along the way, and the shape of our bones and the articular surface of our joints and our muscles and all this became a certain way and kept going a certain way for some kind of reason. And we can maybe think that actually it was beneficial for us to keep going in this way. Now, there was probably trade-offs, which was some things weren't as beneficial, some things were more beneficial. But for some reason, we got like this pole, this skull with a brain and eyes and all this stuff, which is very valuable real estate in our bodies. The most valuable thing in our bodies is this head. And we stuck it. I heard John Kiley say once, an Irish guy who was a brilliant coach and brilliant PhD. We just kind of stuck this pole on top of stuck this head on top of a pole and decided to bounce along on two legs, like, and hope that we didn't fall over and hit our head on the ground and die. So like, that is a risky thing to do, but we did it for a reason, which was probably because it was beneficial, because now we're not walking on all fours or moving on all fours. Now we have hands that are free to grasp and throw and climb, and our eyes are up here so we can look at things, and we can run very fast or run for very long. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is our bones and joints were developed to allow us to be very efficient at walking and running and throwing and things like this. So when you go into the gym, the reason you squat in this way or deadlift in this way or throw a medicine ball in this way is because the way the structure of your body. Roxy, my dog, wouldn't deadlift in the same way as me because we don't have the same structure. And my structure is different to hers because we developed in a different way. So mostly because of the gait cycle, I would say. So yeah, I think everything is related back to the gait cycle, and you'll see it. You'll see like when there's more internal rotation in walking is in this middle phase of gait where we have our knee bent and our body is stacked on top of our foot. And you'll see that in a squat. Through the middle phase of the squat, you'll see more internal rotation, because that's where we need to like really push that sticking point in the middle of the squat. That's where we need to really push through the ground to overcome and come back up. And that middle phase in gait where I walk, or particularly when I run or sprint, that's where you'll see a bit more internal rotation and maybe pronation of the foot, because that's where I really need to push the ground away. So very similar things you're going to see all of the time. And you can go into a lot of detail in it, but that's a never-ending, loopy, windy road.
We'll be here for 6 hours if we're talking about all the bits of gait. This was probably the biggest thing that I also had a couple of questions of this when I posted that story. Is obviously we know now with social media, everyone's like, the pendulum swings back and forth, back and forth. Oh, it's all mechanics, it's all stretching, and this is probably the biggest thing that that my listeners will be looking for is like, oh yeah, it's all stretching, it's all manual therapy, it's all this. Oh wait, no, it's your brain, it's protecting, it's this, and the pendulum swings a lot. And a lot of people who, you don't, it's not like you have many people who go at you, but anyone who disagrees with you would go, oh, it's all movement. He's always talking about mechanics. And I know that, and the majority does. Where do you, how do you implement all this into the biopsychosocial aspect? And obviously, like you said, when you did lower body basics, it was like we're getting joints moving, we're getting them in better positions, more efficient positions. How do you separate them, or especially with your one-to-one clients, but then also how do you embody the biopsychosocial, and what are some things that people should think about that maybe go, oh, pain isn't in my head, or it is my mechanics? Like, how do people know, and how do you go about it?
I don't think people need to know. I think the true biopsychosocial approach is biopsychosocial. So you're not necessarily trying to separate these things, and I never do. And I don't place more value overall on mechanics or psycho or social. I put them all together. And I do place more value potentially on one of them with a one-to-one client, which is like, you're clearly lacking in this area, or you're clearly lacking in this other area. But as a generalized principle, I don't have a bias towards one or the other. And I just like talking about movement a lot. But anyone who knows me or has been coached by me or has a conversation with me would never accuse me of being heavy on like the mechanics side of it. They never ever would. And it would just be potentially people that are looking in from the outside and just honestly feel very insecure about their own practice and realize that he gets better results than me, but I have to find a way to try and knock him in some way. That's what's happening. That I'm telling you, that's what's happening. And it doesn't happen to me that much, but that is what's happening. So like in other industries, you could go into, I'll go off on a slight tangent, but I'll bring it back. In other industries, you could look at like I can't just say to I can't just post on Elon Musk's page, right, and say, I'm a better rocket scientist than you. Yeah. Because like I would have to prove it in some way, right? I would have to say like, okay, like he would say like, okay, let's see who gets to Mars first then, right? Yeah. And then I'm left with nothing. But like in this industry, you can just sit back on your Instagram and say, you're shit, like, or you don't get good results. But actually, where is your doing anything, right? So that's always an interesting one. There's a lot of armchair people that will say a lot of things and will talk about biopsychosocial. And I know people in my city who talk about evidence-based this and that. And guess what they do in clinic? They dry needle people and they give people diagnosis and they spread nocebo so that they keep coming back. But online, they're an evidence-based X, Y, and Z. So like, it's so easy to talk about. But I think that, it very much depends on the person. It depends on the person. I'm always looking at like what are you really lacking the most? And I'm just going to try to bring this up in you more and more and more. So if that's your mindset is just like a bit of a mess, I'm going to help you with that. Yeah. And if that's you're just incredibly weak, then I'm going to help you with that. If that's you're not moving enough, I'm going to help you with that. If that's you're moving way too much, like you're training 15 times a week, I'll probably help you with that. I'll try and lessen that. And even if people are smart about things, right, and they look, let's say they bought lower body bases, they're like, this is a movement program. In the introduction video that I shot several years ago, there's an explanation video as part of that, which shows here's why we're doing things. And if you have a sore knee, that doesn't mean your knee is damaged. We're just going to try and use movement to help you to strengthen these areas. So there's a lot of pain science or explanations, which in my mind, the practical application of our really amazing pain sciences help people understand in a very simple, logical way what you think might be the issue, not like the root cause, but like, here's what I think might be going on. Let me simplify things. We need to help people understand what the problem is. Okay, let's be clear. You have knee pain. We don't have to diagnose it exactly, but we want to be clear, like, what your problem is. We want to say why it's there. And I don't mean root cause. I mean, why I think, like, Jesus, you're doing a 1RM back squat 6 times a week, like, right? So
Yeah.
why is like, okay, there's several factors that I think, I'm not saying I'm correct, but I think there's several factors that are there that could be contributing to this. And then, so what? So what, why, and so what? So what are we going to do about it? Actually, you have a 50% deficit in that right quad. It's 50% weaker than your left quad. Actually, you can't flex your knee. Actually, you don't sleep very well. Actually, X, Y, and Z. So what, why, and so what? They're the three big questions that I will ask for all my clients, and I will ask them to help me answer that, not just me answer that for them. So to me, that's pain science in a practical clinic. What's wrong? Why do we think it's wrong? What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
And the explanations come around that.
And that's the thing. And sometimes half of it is even if, because I remember someone asked you, I think it was about the pronation drill. Someone, they were asking whether was it the actual biomechanics of moving the joints, or was it the placebo of that, oh, my thing is now moving better and I've got movement there and I've got the coordination and sensation there that, oh, now my brain feels safe. Where is placebo a big thing that helps them? Or for that example, let's say it is the foot or the hip flexor and moving it, what would you say is the difference between a bit of placebo and when that can be beneficial and when it actually is the joint that is helping them?
Yeah, we will never know. But the interesting thing with placebo is I work with very difficult clients who have struggled in a lot of ways, who have struggled for years with a lot of issues. And they've often gone to a lot of authorities that they would place a lot of trust in. So a lot of doctors, surgeons, world's best physios, all these people, right? Specialists. And they haven't helped them. So why didn't the placebo work for them? That's always my question. And then I look at something. Why is the placebo working just for me? Because I never use. Now I can understand why it might, because like they see an Instagram account and they see it helping other people. Like I can understand reasons why it might, but it's always people that saying like that might be placebo. Of course, anything might be placebo.
Yeah.
One guy was commenting on one of my videos there one day. It was like someone who was doing a heel elevated exercise, and like his foot was having and his lower leg was having massive tremors, and he was like, this is placebo or something. I was like, or same with a foam roller bridge. I'm like if you were doing bicep curls and your bicep got stronger, would you say that it was placebo or the bicep curl that did it? I'm looking for predictable, repeatable results. And so if I see someone that's lacking their hip in a certain way, I will do exercises that I think are going to open up that space. And it doesn't mean it will, but like it's relatively predictable and relatively repeatable. I've done it with thousands of people. More people than not get better in this way. So predictable and repeatable. But I'll always err on the side of placebo. I will try and be neutral enough and say, I'm never saying this is going to help you or anything like that. I'm saying, here's what I think, and let's see what happens. We're going to work together. Let's see what happens. But I'm always erring on the side of using language that might invoke placebo, which is like, actually, you are in a great position here. I think you have so much opportunity to improve. I think these exercises could be super beneficial, rather than you're in a shit position and I don't think there's anything that can be done to help you. It's impossible to stay neutral in this stuff. Like it's literally impossible. You're going to placebo or nocebo someone. It can't not be that way. So I'll always err on the side of being optimistic with the fear of there being a little bit of placebo. But in the real world, in the research, I understand that they have to be so careful because they're trying to make extrapolations based on like, here's the input, here's the output. But in clinic, it's not as simple as that. it's just not. You're working with one person who has one experience, who has an issue that you're trying to help them with, and your language is incredibly powerful. And I'm always erring on the side of optimism, which might potentially have a placebo effect. But what can you do?
And that's the thing. Everyone talks about the biomechanics and goes, "Oh no, but no, it's we know that it's psychosocial social, and it's all about what they think about it." But it is biopsychosocial. Like we move. People go, "Oh no," like, and this is where people have their different opinions. But it's like, "Oh no, you can flex." Like, oh, they picked this one research paper. Oh yeah, you can flex your back. You can do whatever. But then it's like, but no, if you keep loading your back in this certain way too much, you're gonna have problems. Not gonna, but you're more likely to have problems that if you were doing it maybe a little bit better. So and that's what I think people like to now jump on this, like, oh no, it's biopsychosocial, but they forget it is the bio. And I think that's why you probably do have a lot of success is you're finding those reasons, and then naturally via placebo or feeling good and feeling confident, it'll improve. But then, and it's similar to my approach, it's like, it's not biopsycho, or it's like, look at the person. It's like, so people may have a hip flexor issue or a back issue, let's say back, for example. You look at them and so many people like to split it. And it's like, is it bio and is it the way they're moving, or is it their mindset about it? But it's like, maybe it's both. And I think that's the thing you do well is like, yeah, okay, it is both, but I know with biomechanics, I can improve joint range of motion. I can get a better contraction, sensation, all this stuff. What's for someone who's listening who has these niggling injuries and is used to foam rolling and stretching and all that, if any reason, how would you explain to them that those things don't work? Like, we're not talking about the psychosocial side of it and the placebo, but physically, why do you prefer this active approach and loading tissues and getting more mobility?
Good question. I'll just go back to what you said for 1 sec before I answer that, Hayden. So with regards to the back, right? So let's say someone is afraid of flexing their spine, and they've hurt their back when they rounded their back before. So let's take a rounded approach to thinking about this, right? So some coaches or therapists or whatever will explain it to people and say, no, flexing your back is fine. Here's what the research says. Off you go, right? Some coaches will give them exercises that help them flex their back and prove it to them that see how it feels. It feels okay, blah, blah, blah. And then other coaches, so one way is to speak to them. It's great option. Second way, actually do something that proves it to them. And the third option is also to do those both of those things, but also look at how they're flexing their back and say, actually, you're not say to them, but say in your own mind, it actually looks like they're only flexing from these two tiny areas here. So my approach would be, if it's relevant, not always, but if it's relevant, okay, I'm going to explain to you why I think flexion is not just okay, but actually beneficial to be doing. Rounding your back, why it's important, what the research says. I'm not going to dive into research too much, but like, actually, I really like proof in terms of, well, I'll always relate it back to another client. They don't care that much about the research, but they do care about other stories. And I'll say, I've had someone in this exact situation and they were fine. Relating it back to one person, if you think about TripAdvisor, you're going to go on holidays somewhere and you could see 10,000 reviews. Some are good, some are bad, right? And you'll be like, I don't know. But if one person, your best friend, says, I went there, it was shit, you're not going there. Yeah. So it's someone that you can kind of relate to. You know this one person, you can trust him. So I will always relate it back to, oh, well, my client last week actually was a very similar situation than you. And here's what we did, or last month or whatever, or I've had several clients and now they're doing really well. So proving it in that way, no, it's not proof, but explaining it in that way is really valuable, I think. So one thing, explain it to them. Second thing, prove it to them in terms of doing exercises in a graded way, a nice, comfortable way for them, not a scary way, semi-scary, but not super scary. And then also improve the load sharing capacity of the spine potentially by making or helping it flex through more areas. Because you can't pretend that physics doesn't exist. Like, we are subject on this earth to the laws of physics. And the laws of physics are like, of course that the more load placed on one area, there's more load on that area. So like, of course, if you're only flexing through these two areas, you can keep making those areas stronger. But another way to make an area stronger is to make all the other areas around it also stronger and doing their work as well. So to me, that's a true approach. That's looking at the movement, saying, I can actually, in my mind, not telling them, saying like, you're not moving through this area, just saying, like, just doing exercises that helps them open up that space, explaining it to them and proving it to them. Yeah, so that's what I would say there. And one other thing, I know I'm going all over the place now, but usually the people that are super interested in biomechanics have a negative mindset around the body. So they're using biomechanics to prove why you might get injured.
Yeah.
Right? They're using it to be like, yeah, like, look at your knee, like, this is shit, we need to change it this way and this way and this way. I'm using biomechanics as an optimist approach, which is like a complete movement optimist, which is a term in the industry now. I couldn't be more of a movement optimist, which is, you haven't moved your shoulder in this way in 20 years. I bet you we can get it back moving again. Not, you haven't moved your shoulder, you're fucked, which is a lot of what biomechanics people will do. Or if your knee goes in this position, it's fucked. I'm like, no,
Vegas.
It might be absolutely fine. But let's make sure your knee can move in every way. That's how I use it. So like, that's where having a good eye is really good, because you can actually see the positions that people are avoiding. That's where biomechanics is really important. These people that say biomechanics is irrelevant, I'd love to see them assessing a client. They couldn't. How? Of course it's irrelevant, because they don't have a clue how to look at movement. I'm like, are they flexing their knee or their hip? They're like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
They don't. They genuinely don't know. They cannot see anything. So yeah, I'm using biomechanics as an optimist approach. I have so much faith in the body. Your other question then around foam rolling and all that stuff can work. But again, I said it earlier, I'm looking for predictable, repeatable results.
Yeah.
Predictable, repeatable. And is foam rolling relatively predictable? Yes, I can predict that you'll probably feel good for 10 minutes.
I was about to say, yeah, it's predictable for an hour,
Yeah.
2 hours max.
Yeah. Is it repeatable? Yeah, you can do that as much as you want. But the predictable, repeatable results I'm looking for is, like, you do these certain exercises, you're going to improve in this movement, and you're going to continue to have access to this movement without always have to do these exercises. You're going to keep getting more movement there. You're going to keep getting stronger. So it's predictable in that, like, if you do a bicep curl, your bicep is probably going to get stronger and bigger. If you foam roll it, yes, your bicep might feel a little bit better for a little while. So I want predictable in terms of, this is going to get stronger. This is going to move better. You're going to have more connection and awareness of the area potentially. And is it repeatable? Yeah, you can do this on your own. I don't need you to come in and I have to dry needle you, or I have to do manual therapy. It's 100% repeatable. You can do this wherever you want. I think some of our programs showed people that you can get incredibly strong without ever needing to touch a weight. So that's the reason I wrote it in that way during COVID, because people didn't have access to gyms. So like, yeah, predictable, repeatable. And I don't think manual therapy, I think it can definitely be a very valuable approach. I know a lot of pro athletes that like have their own massage therapist all year round, and they love it. They absolutely love it. And I'm not one to argue with them. They're very smart people. They earn millions of dollars, and they're like, this is a big part of my prep. 100% off you go. But also they're training as well, and they're training very, very
Yeah.
hard. So yeah. So yeah,
And
that's what I would say.
that's the difference is those people. And I think that's where once you can get people to understand by having conversations that you can do these things and get your massage and get whatever you need. But then if you want to keep it or you want to avoid continuously having this problem, use movements, get load in places, get strength and stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing that they get stuck with this, like, oh, it's repeatable and predictable, but then it's just this repeatable and predictable thing for however long.
Yeah.
And with your and using your ankle, your latest foot program, we should start calling you the foot guy. I think everyone's forgot about lower body basics now. It's the feet program. You've got that structured in certain ways, and one of the things I took from you is the graphs and how to show people the steps. What are the overarching? We don't want to give away the $1 million secrets, but what are the overarching principles you go through when you have a client and you're like, it doesn't matter where they start, just the overarching principle of where do you start people? What are you looking for? Where are you trying to get them? And how do you get people from the bottom, let's say, or wherever they are to where they want to go to that ideal outcome?
Yeah. Oh, you can give away all the secrets you want. I do it every day on Instagram, basically, like for the last 5 years. But anyone who's actually interested, like they know that no one will ever commit to anything without buying something, or there's no level of commitment there. So so Dave O'Sullivan is someone that kind of taught me around graphing things out. He was working in pro sport a lot, and obviously the first question that an athlete, let's say they tear their ACL, like, is when am I going to be back to sport? And so you're going to put a timeline on something, a rough timeline. It's not exact, and you're going to have steps or work back, reverse engineer that back. So like that's super logical, but it doesn't get done in private practice. Maybe it doesn't get done in anything, and it should get done. It should get done in weight loss. It should get done in rehab. It should get done in pain, where like what's your outcome? What do you want to get back to?
Yeah.
So I said what, why, and what, and so what earlier, but there's also what, why, so what, and when is another question. That's a good question, because it focuses people's minds. And like part of the why is also like, why do you want to do this? Why? And most people would say, I just want to be out of pain, but actually that's just not a good answer. It's like, I want to get back to playing tennis because I love it. Let's take the focus off the pain all of the time. So like a simple graph like that would be, let's put tennis up the top here, or running, or playing sport, AFL, soccer, whatever the hell it is. And then let's break down the things that you need to be able to do. So like if I want to be able to play tennis, I need to be able to sprint, probably need to be able to jump a little bit. I need to be able to change direction. I need to be able to change levels, like drop up and down into lunges and little positions like this. I need to be able to accelerate, decelerate. I need to be able to stabilize, let's say, on a single leg. I need to be able to swing a racket. So like my eyes are tracking an object and my upper body is decoupling a little bit from my lower body, and so on. There's a million things that you can break it down into. But like, so on that graph, before going back to play tennis, there should be like, okay, we've done some jumping, we've done some lunging, we've done some sprinting, change the direction. But for that, I want to be able to maybe do some strength work, relatively specific to these positions. So maybe some squats, some lunges, some lateral movement, some hip lock type of work, and some plyometrics. Before that, we want to be able to potentially, not want to, but potentially we will isolate some of these positions. So like maybe we'll go on a leg extension, maybe we'll do a foam roller bridge, maybe we'll do a calf raise, stuff like that. So a little bit more isolated. And before that, potentially we want to make sure that we have some range of motion available. So like, can you actually flex your knee? Can you actually move your hip? So we might just do like a joint mobility type of movement or something like that. And so before that, it might be passive treatment on the table or something like that. Let's say it's an ACL, like I might be just moving your knee for you or something like that. So like, it's a very simple way to graph things out. And when you ask someone, they can have zero knowledge basically of movement at all, anatomy, biomechanics,
Yeah.
zero knowledge, but you'll ask them like, does this make sense that you need to do this? You want to be able to do this, to do this. And it's not perfect. It's not linear in any way, shape or form, but it's rough. And they'll say 100% that makes sense. And it would be the smile on their face. They'll be so happy that you've explained to them that there's actually a thought process behind this. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I think that's where, and with the graphs and that, and having that process, and you explained it really well, is like, what do you want to do as a person? What do you want to be able to do? What do you have to be able to do it? And then that's almost like, oh, and you can almost use that to be like, so do you see how getting rubbed every second day with a massage isn't helping? Do you see how getting needled isn't always helping you? And then that almost becomes like, and even for the people listening who aren't a coach or whatever, and and the people who are in this pain, it's like, you can almost now see why getting a needle doesn't help, or why rolling all the time. And when you can start to go these, and you can tick these little goals, it's like, oh, look, this is the goal I can work on, rather than just being stuck at, oh, I want to play tennis, but I'm too sore to do anything in the gym.
Yeah.
Out of all that, what's your favorite component? I know you don't have, like, I doubt you're going to have favorites, but what's something you really enjoy learning about, or talking about the most?
Um,
I'm asking you to choose from your children. I know.
in what way? What do you mean?
Like, in terms of movement and everything, like if you have an athlete, like you just said, all that stuff you just said, like, do you enjoy the actual learning about biomechanics and the theory behind it? Do you enjoy getting out in the field and running with people? What bit of your job, let's say, do you enjoy the most?
Um, I love working with people. I love working with people. The right people for me. I really enjoy that. And I love progress, which is a bit of a cop-out answer, but I love when someone has a light bulb moment, which was last week or yesterday or 10 minutes ago, I couldn't do this and now I can.
Mhm.
That to me is pain science. Like drawing them graphs and stuff is pain science. That's all helping people understand in a very simple way, and then proving to them, look at this, look how adaptable your
Yeah.
body is, look how strong you can be. And when you see that hope that comes back into them, a lot of them have lost hope and bullshit explanations around like pain and all this stuff that don't make sense to them. That is
Mhm.
not giving people back hope. Showing them a logical step-by-step approach to getting them back to where they want to be, that gives people hope. And now they will take on board explanations. So I love progress. And yeah, I do love the higher end side of things, which is our plyos and our change of direction and stuff. Like that's fun to me because you get to see the fruits of your labor, all the things that you've
Yeah.
worked on along the way. Like if you want to, if you just work on squatting, you'll always work on squatting and they just put on like another 2 kilos on the bar. That
Yeah.
doesn't give me that much of a buzz. I know it gives some people like a huge buzz, but if we've worked on squats and if we've worked on your ankle strength and we've worked on all these things and now you're doing plyos and you're like, holy shit, like look at this. This is a fine tune motor control, strength stability, elasticity, intra and intermuscular coordination. Like I can't pin one thing here. This is speed of movement that just makes me very happy to see someone who's lost that and gets back to that. And there is nothing that can replace that for someone. When they get back to speed of movement that they think they've lost or haven't accessed for a while, the confidence that builds in their body is or in themselves is phenomenal. So speed of movement, that stuff is
Yeah.
really cool to me.
That's a good point. Yeah, when you see, you kind of see it all come together, and someone might not be able to move, and then they're sprinting, jumping, changing direction. Like you're like, yeah, like it's like
Yeah.
it is. It's like this little fruits of your success and
Yeah.
your work. What are you reading anything at the moment? Are you studying anything now? Are you more focused on your seminars, your work and stuff, or are you kind of you looking at
Um,
anything else?
um, I'm not studying anything, I don't think. Um, No, not studying anything in particular related to like my job.
Yeah.
Just kind of learning a lot as I go along as I work with more people. I have a little project coming up with Jonas Dodu. You know Jonas?
No, I haven't
It's
heard of it.
Speedworks. He's one of the best sprint speed coaches in the world when it comes to like team sports and stuff like that. So we're going to do a
Yeah.
little small short course together soon.
Cool.
That and then we're going to hopefully release our like mentorship type of thing in January. I think it's going to be. So my focus is on just get my shit sorted over the next little while so that I can put all my focus on those things. And yeah, most of
Yeah.
my learning just comes working with people. Honestly,
Yeah.
just like that's why we are financially wise, like I don't need to work with too many. It's not as lucrative to. It's more lucrative to teach a seminar to 40 coaches than to work one on one with a person. But and I do learn a lot from the seminars because you see a load of people and you see what their interpretation of things is, and you need to get better at your explanations. But when I work one on one with a client and we have an hour together, and I'm like just trying to get things across to them and teach them my principles or teach them an exercise or coach even one little thing. I learned so much from that.
Mm.
Basically every time. It's really good.
Yeah. What have you got coming up? When's your next seminars? When are you going next?
We're going to America now soon, in a few weeks, and we're going to New York, which is sold out, and then Washington DC, which I think there's a couple of tickets left for.
Yeah.
And then we've won in Italy. Then in November, we chose Italy for November because up by Venice, Verona, we're going to
Yeah, I saw
Magnitudo
that. You sold
training.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's sold out. So actually didn't know if how that would do, because obviously the language barrier. But if they
Yeah.
can
What do you do
understand me
for
on
that?
social media, they're coming to hear me speak English. So
Ah,
like we did one in Germany before, we did one in Sweden, and like their English is better than mine. So
yeah.
I think Italians is a little bit different, but yeah, I'll just do the same, just probably a bit more practical than we did before.
Yeah.
Because yeah, people just need to feel stuff, They need to try and feel it and coach it to each other. And when they do that, the theory stuff just falls into place, I think.
Yeah. Are you changing much of the seminar, or it's all mainly staying the same? Like, does that have you evolved that much, or are there new things you're doing?
Yeah, there's some newer things and some or just more. I'm just trying to get more and more practical stuff in as I go along.
Yeah.
So like not necessarily, yeah, it's changed even from I think our first international seminar was only August last year, 2022. We've taught maybe 12 or 15 maybe since then. And it's changed a shit ton. Like it's just gotten more practical as we went along.
Yeah.
I think that just makes people just need to do stuff. Like they need to do it, feel it, see it, and
Yeah.
then understand the theory off the back of that.
Yeah. So you're trying to get me to come for another one? Little
You can
little
come.
plug,
You can
little
come.
plug
Well, I
upsell.
don't know when we'll be back in Australia. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? Are you doing any cool stuff?
No, oh no, I'm working on like a pain quiz and stuff. So that'll be coming soon. I'm trying to make it so that people can almost do this quiz and actually just get a rough idea of where they are, and just like you do, like the low hanging fruits to start with. Like almost like, oh, I've had this injury for so long, and then just a few things they can read about it, take away, just so people can start like just this low level of like you just need to do the low hanging fruits. And it's like what you
Yeah.
do. It's like you're not getting people doing this massive program like with lower body basics. It's like do a bit of breathing, do a bit of these certain positions, and you'll feel better. And then you can go back to what you're doing and implement it. So now, not really, just trying to catch up to you. I got a few years. uh,
Yeah, it's just
how
compounding
how did
consistency.
you? Yeah, one of the things was one of the final things was how did you start when you started doing all your content and like you took off in a relatively short period of time? How did you, and that was one of the questions I forgot to ask, how did you get into the actual social media stuff? So obviously we talked about your injury and stuff. It's actually good that reminded me. How did you, what made you start the social media stuff? Like you did the injury and you got better at it, but and
I
what
was
kind of
just
plan did
posting
you have with
shit
it?
like I had zero plan. So I was just posting shit. Like you can probably, people can even go back and see 5 or 6 years ago. I was just posting random shit like, oh, I'm just doing this exercise or talking about something. I can remember like the first time I was doing like a talking video that wasn't me just doing an exercise. Like it was me talking about a concept. I'd say I did about 200 takes. I was fucking bricking it, and you just feel like such an idiot. Like, but now most of the things you see on my social media are literally like one take. It's just like, actually, I think every single video in the foot program was
first take.
One take. Akira doesn't even know that if I'm coaching Kira or someone in the video, she doesn't even know she doesn't even know the exercise. It's just like, press play, I'll explain it to you and we'll do it. It's just,
how is that?
It's just like, so it's actually, I said it to her. I said, this is the most valuable thing that we could have, that I can just like fucking talk now, because that took so long.
That's the thing, when you do it so many times and you teach so many people. Like, how many people do you reckon you've taught now at seminars? Like, what, you've done 20 or 30 probably. You'd be up nearly 1,000,
including private. No, not quite.
What, 20?
I don't know. Like in Sydney or in Australia alone, there was 110, I think, between the three. So like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you just see, it's just none of that is this, I'm born with this skill or anything, or like anyone is born. Some people are better than others, but like, it's just fucking consistently trying to do shit. That's what I mean about doing. Like, people just have to do stuff more.
Yeah. You know? And that's even with training. It's like people expect to like do this one exercise or whatever and get better. But it's like, you playing a sport and running and jumping, the more times you do it, the more better you get at it, the better, more efficient you get at it, the more confident. And it just cycles. It just all, and then one day you're like, wow, I can do this. I'm not hurting and I'm fast. And you're like, oh, well, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Or what do you, for people who don't follow you or haven't heard of you before, where can they find you? Where can they see your stuff? This is your time to plug to my 3 listeners.
They can just go to social media, I think is the best place. So Instagram is David Gray Rehab, and they can go wherever they want from there. I'll definitely try and sell them something if they're there. So once they're there, they're good. And thanks for having me, man. You're doing a great job.
Thank you for joining. Thank you. We'll have to catch up next time when I'm over next. I've still got that invitation from Kira. Well, I'm coming to Europe next year. I don't know where, but Kira said when I'm there next, I've got an invitation. So you don't have an option.
Come along, 100%.
I'll be seeing you in Oxy. All right, thanks for joining me.
All right, man. Thank you.
No, see ya.